Good afternoon.
Welcome to Ham Radio today. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. John here, N4AJR, and today we're going to dive into the CHIRP software in part 2 of the UV-5R video series. We'll cover where to get CHIRP, how to use it, and of course the cable, the programming cable for the radio, and just go through the basics of CHIRP. Shouldn't be too hard, and you will see why CHIRP is by far the preferred method over programming the radio by hand on the keypad, which is how I did it in the last video. You'll see CHIRP will make life a whole heap easier. So as we dive in here, I'm going to show you where to download the CHIRP software from, and we'll go through that website real quick. It's pretty self-explanatory, but they do have documentation there. They do have a wiki page, a lot of information there. If you run into any issues, which every once in a while people will run into a problem with connectivity and whatnot, talking to the radio from the computer and such. Not going to dive into potential issues too much. Like I said, I'll show you where the documentation is, where you can look up trying to solve potential problems, but for the most part, that's what that is there for. We're not gonna dive into that too hard on here. We can keep this one real basic on just using CHIRP and so on. So we're gonna dive in now, pull up a web page here, and show you where to get the software from, and we'll get started. So this is where you get it. chirp.danplanet.com, and I'll put that link down in the description of the video. So that's where you get software from. And when you come to the page, this is what you'll see. Get it. It's pretty easy. But you can click download and go to here. It is donationware, I think is what they call it. I don't know what they call it. You can donate. You don't have to, but if you really like the software, of course, you know, they could always use a little bit of the help. But when you go down through here, it'll show where you can click to get the latest Windows version, the latest Mac version. And if you are more hardcore and want to run it off of Linux, there are Linux instructions down here. We're going to keep it simple on the Windows version. And we'll go from there. Although, you know, I recommend using Linux if you can. It's good software, good OS. I have computers that are dedicated to running just that. But I already have it downloaded. So when you go to download it, you would click here, and it'll bring you up to this page right here, showing you what's supported, the CHIRP software supporting, so on and so forth. What you're looking for is the CHIRP Daily Installer exe. You can download other formats, and there's right here. Download page will help you figure that out if you're confused on what to get and so on. You will see other file types, the little tarballs for Linux, and you'll see things for Mac OS and so on. Like, so we're going to focus on Windows. Sorry. But you'll want to get this, and it's called CHIRP Daily with a date. It's not necessarily the date changing every single day, but what that's doing is the software does get updated quite frequently. So you want to make sure that you are using the latest version of the software when you run it. And I don't believe mine will do it today. I had it open earlier. However, when you start the software, if there is an update available, the software will flag you and say, hey, there's a new version. You should go get it. And I highly recommend doing that. They bug fix it, and they keep it up to date pretty good. So if you get flagged, you would go to this page. When you click the OK, you'll go to this page and just download the new installer. You don't have to uninstall the old. You don't have to do anything with it. Just run this installer. It will go in, and magically, voila, you're on the most latest, the most current version. So that's where you get it from. If you want to donate, you can donate here. The wiki page is over here, documentation. If there's any known issues, that's going to be in here. Yes, it's not the cleanest interface in the world, but that's where it's at. Okay, so this is an official programming cable for the UV-5R. I don't know if you can see that there. This one, it's got a couple of LED lights on it right there that will light up when the cable's in use, and plugs in right here like this on the actual radio. Plugs in the same spot where an earpiece or a speaker mic or whatever would go, just like that. And then of course you hook that into the USB port on your computer, and then turn the radio on. The software will say sometimes that you need to turn the radio on and max out the volume. If you have communication issues, that's where you would start experimenting with that. I know it sounds a little odd, but the CHIRP software will tell you that. I have not had that issue where I had to turn the volume all the way to max. As long as it turns on and I set the COM port properly, then the radio will talk to the computer, no problem. However, it is finicky, and some people, yeah, you know, turn the volume all the way up because I don't know, it just makes a difference. All right, so from here, once you've got the software downloaded, I always scan my stuff on Windows just in case. Give it a scan, should be fine. Virus scans and such. But you'll just execute the installer, install the software wherever you want on your drive or drives or whatever. Once you get it installed, we'll go ahead and minimize that. Once you get it installed, you're going to have this little icon right here for CHIRP. A little old school port, actually. I don't know if you can even find those on computers anymore, but whatever. Just double click that. It'll come up to a nice, pretty blank screen like this. So what they recommend doing in order to build your programming file for the radio is turn the open the software up. You're going to turn the radio on with the cable plugged in, which I showed a few minutes ago. And once you get it turned on, once the software's been installed and so on, you're going to have to set your COM port most likely. I do have one laptop, I think, where it comes up and it's the only COM port available. But you're going to have to go into here, and you're going to have to go to radio. You want to download from the radio. The way they recommend it, you're going to pull the data down from the radio. Even if it's never been programmed, it will have a default. I think there's like a default channel or something. But you pull the info down because it's going to get all the menu options and everything else. And then it'll open it up in the software. The radio that I'm using here already has programming in it. So we're going to pull that down. It'll have a whole bunch of data. If you have a brand new radio, it's obviously not going to pull down everything that you're going to see here. But for this, the COM port's what I'm talking about. And see how I have multiple COM ports? And we're going to do this, I think it's COM 4. But you'll set your vendor for the radio, and you'll set the model. So this CHIRP is actually capable of working with quite a large variety of radios. I have used it to program an old Kenwood D72, and it works with most of your major radios. It has some functionality with. So you want to make sure the vendor's set to Baofeng or Baofeng or however you want to pronounce it. I don't know. I call it Baofeng because that's just how I pronounce it. And then pick the model of the radio. You can see right there, lots of different options. I'm doing a UV-5R. Most of the others, similar versions of this, it's going to be basically the same. But then you would hit OK. And then it's going to tell you right here, turn the radio off, connect the cable. Make sure it's connected. Do make sure when you plug the cable into the radio, give it a firm press, because every once in a while, when you press, there'll be that last little click just to make sure it's seated properly. Then you turn it on. And this is where I was talking about before. Sometimes you have to set the volume all the way to max. I've never had to do that, but some people do. I don't know. I don't know why exactly, but hey, whatever. Ensure it's tuned to a channel with no activity. So if you turn your radio on and it happened to have a frequency in it that was in use, you would have to change off of that. You don't want any activity on the radio. You want it to be just kind of sitting there. We're going to click OK. And I will tell you right now, I cannot remember if it was COM 1 or COM 4. So if it fails, then hey, good job. So we hit OK. And now you see where it says cloning. I picked the right COM port. If it had been the incorrect COM port, it would have thrown an error, a communications error. And that's where you go back and make sure that you set your COM port properly. if you get an error with communication. So when it's done, it will pull this up. It's going to give it a default name, Baofeng UV-5R Untitled. This is everything I pulled out of the radio. Bunch of stuff in here. We're going to leave that. I have some available channels down on the bottom. That's where we'll do some new stuff. So when it pulls it up like this, I always skip the 0 channel. I've done when it came by default and I did the first things, it skipped 0. I skipped 0. It's just the way I do it. You can adjust memories, memory range, special channels. You can show empty, not show empty. A lot of different options in here. Of course, your typical window options. You can adjust how things look and so on. I keep it like this. So we'll go into the settings first. So you'll notice if you saw the last video where we went through some of the menu options and all those different numbers and keys and jumping back and forth and so on, well, that's where all of this is. You can see in here, this is a lot easier to do. Where I had to go through menu options and up and down arrows and all that to change the squelch. Well, right here, I can change it right here. Battery saver on or off. See, I can click it. Backlight timeouts. You can enable beeps when you push buttons. It'll give you the little beep. Timeouts. This is where you can set display modes for the radio, where if you want to see the name or the frequency, that's where this is set, or the channel number. This one here was set to both show the name. Some people, what they'll do, which I mentioned in the last video, they'll set it to display the frequency on one and the name on the other and then match them. I don't particularly do that because I like to have the two different things on two different frequencies. But, you know, whatever, however you want to set this, it's your radio, you know, swing for the fences. You can adjust the colors of the standby, the receive, and transmit right here. There are a few options. This is just how I had it set. This one, I believe, is actually my wife's radio. She's a big fan of purple, so there's purple in there. And you can set the Roger beep. Personally, the Roger beep gets really annoying, so I keep that turned off. There again, your radio, go for it. Advanced settings. We mentioned some of this stuff in the last video. Most of the settings in here, you're probably just going to leave at the default. There's no reason to really change it unless you just want to experiment. But you can set Vox, you can do dual watch, you can set the transmit priority. The A and the B, that's between, if you look at your radio, A on top, B on the bottom. That way, if it's dual watching and you go to transmit, the priority, it's going to go to whichever VFO you have picked there. You can set different alarm modes. You can change the voice between English and Chinese. The scan resume, you can set that. Remember, we covered that last time in the other video, changing the scans and what the buttons do for that. And you can set, you know, a bunch of other stuff, key locks, broadcast radio. You can actually turn that feature totally off. Like I said, most of these things here, you're going to leave set at the default. So here's the other settings right here. Power on messages. I didn't change any of that. What I did alter, power on message 1 and 2, you can actually set right here to say hello. If you have a call sign, you can have it show a call sign. You can have it show a name. I put hi LMS on here. Power on, you can have it do a message. You can have it do full. There's a lot of different things you can set. This is where you can set your VHF upper and lower limits. You can enable VHF transmit, and you can set your UHF upper and lower. So basically, your 140 megahertz and your 400 megahertz, you can set limits. You can change the transmit and so on. I don't recommend really messing with much of that. This part here, just leave them at the defaults. They're already, that's a pretty wide range right there. So that's your other settings. Most of that, like I said, I would just leave it to default. You can change, you know, the power on message to say, hey, how are you? You know, that kind of thing. You are limited with how much text you can put in here because of the screen. So it'll yell at you if you put too much. Work mode settings. And you see how much easier this is going through here versus if you did this on the keypad, going menu to menu and changing and going back. Oh my God, yeah, you'd be drinking hard alcohol by that point. But you can set for your display, your VFO or memory mode. This is when you start it up, right? Obviously, you'll alter these things as you're using it. You can set the start channels for VFO A and B or memory A and B. You can set the start frequencies for the VFOs. You can set if you want to have a shift on, offset. You can set a whole bunch of stuff right here. Most of this, you're just going to leave it to default. You can change these. So if you have your favorite repeater or you want to start off on a simplex channel, you can set that here once it's programmed. That way, when you turn the radio on, it will automatically default to those channels for you. That I did change, but most of the rest of the stuff I just kind of left alone. FM radio preset. You want it to start up on a certain frequency. If you got a hot radio station you like, there you go. Let's see. None of this I messed with at all. DTMF settings, you should not have to change any of that outside of very special circumstances. If you do have to change any of this or feel the need to change any of this, that's something to dive into that's outside the realm of this particular video. And then service settings, same thing. I left all this alone. Didn't change any of that. No reason to for what we're doing. There again, that's kind of outside the scope of this video. That's your settings though. Now to accomplish that from the keypad would take substantially more effort. In here, you can change it all right there in about that much time and be ready to go. So you go back to memories. Now, of course, as you're making changes, save the file. I'm not going to save this one yet because it didn't do anything, but you can hit save and it'll come up with this. Pick a name, pick a location. I'm just going to call this, let's see, we'll just call it VF test. Now it's going to save it as an image, a .img file. That's fine. Leave it that way. Not a big deal. And then you'll see the name will change up here. That's how it saves. So if you have a radio and you have the CHIRP software and you have the programming cable and everything, but you've got your comms guy for your group if you're in an outdoors group or whatever, or you've got a friend who's got it all built and programmed for you, and all they have to do is send you that image file, the img file. You would open up CHIRP, you would open up that img file, and then it would pull up everything they did, and then you would just load that in your radio. Boom, you're good to go. So like I said, ignore everything that's already in here. We're just going to go down. The UV-5R can go up to 128, I believe it is. 127 on here because it has the 0. But it has 128 memory channels, which is really kind of crappy. I wish it had more. Most of my other radios, as I said in the last video, most of the other ones I have go into the hundreds, if not thousands. I've got some that have got like 10,000 memory spaces and such. But hey, you know, you work with what you got, right? So you would go to an empty memory bank like this, right? And you click it and it highlights it. It's kind of like, I guess it's basically like a spreadsheet, sort of. The software can be a little, it's weird. But you right click on it and you can pull up properties. This is where you can move rows up and down if you put things in and you want to change the order or whatever. You can do the basic stuff. If you wanted to insert something in between, say 2 of these, you can insert rows above, below, basically like a spreadsheet. But you hit properties and you're going to get this little memory properties window right here. That's for the 98 that we just highlighted. You know, if you're just starting fresh, it would be for 1. And you're going to have frequency right here. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to put in just a simplex frequency. So right here, if I wanted to put in a VHF frequency, let's just say I would do 145. Let's get rid of that 0. I would do 145, say, dot, I don't know. Let's just pick 495. Don't worry about the trailing zeros. If it adds them, perfectly fine. You want to give the frequency a name. So let's just say this would be simplex 8. Well, we'll just say simplex, simple 8. You're limited on how many characters you can put in here. So that's why you'll see some of the names up there. I used abbreviations for the repeaters, like the town they were located in. For simplex, you don't have to put a tone mode. You don't have to put tone SQL. No cross modes. All of this stuff that's in here by default, you can just leave it. Offset by default, just leave that. Duplex, obviously we're not duplexing because it's a simplex frequency. And of course the mode we're going to use is FM. You do have the option of narrow FM that will come in for FRS and GMRS. And then of course if you wanted to program it but skip the channel, you can put a skip into it here. And then you can set your power setting either between high and low. I keep it on high. It should default to high. So that's a simplex frequency. That right there, that fast, we hit OK, and then scroll back down because it will do that. And then boom, here's 98 that I just put in, just like that. If you remember from the last video, when we did that by the keypad, we'd still be sitting here trying to get all that part programmed in, and that was just simplex. So if we go to here and we want to do properties, and we're going to do, say, let's do a repeater. So we would do, say, 147 dot, we'll just pick a frequency. There's nothing there on that one that I know of. And then let's call it RPT1. And then let's say this one has a tone. So we would put tone, and then we would say, I don't know if that's 114 tone. And remember from the last video, for those who may be new to this, if a repeater has a tone, in order to access the repeater, they will tell you the repeater's tone is 114.8. You would set tone, you would set 114.8. That way, when you key the repeater from the radio, underneath where you don't hear it, there's a tone being sent, and that will, it's kind of like an access code to open the repeater, basically. Tone SQL you can leave alone. Cross mode you can leave alone. Obviously these things here, we don't change anything with that. And then we'll go to the duplex. Now when you're looking up the repeater you're programming, it will tell you if it's a plus or a minus shift. You can do weird offsets. Repeaters 99% of the time are going to be like this. So let's just say, for sake of arguments, it's a minus. The offset on VHF is 0.6, it's going to default to that. If I was on UHF, my offset would be that 5.0. You have to manually set that. Since we're on 147 megahertz, that's already set. Obviously, the repeater would be FM. And then I'll set my power to high. So what this is doing is telling it when I key the repeater to shift down on this offset and transmit on that frequency. So you'll notice when we hit OK here to program that in, you'll see right here how it has a little bit more data. See how it has the duplex here? So when this gets keyed, that would change the frequency for transmit based on the other, based on the minus, based on the offset and all that. You see how fast we just programmed a repeater. If you remember from there, again, from the last video, using the keypad, we'd still be sitting there trying to work through that, and probably would be for another few minutes because it's just pain. That's how you program a simplex frequency and how you program a repeater frequency. Simple as that. So in addition to your ham frequencies, obviously you can program in frequencies that you want to listen to. If there's something within those two bands or within that the listening range, which is pretty wide, you can program anything in here you want, even if you can't transmit on it, as long as it's not something outside the bounds of the radio itself, you can program it in and listen. But you can, in addition to that, you can go up here to radio and import from data sources, and you can query data sources. Or you can import from stock configurations. This will have stock configurations for overseas. There is NOAA weather radio stuff, which you see up right here where I have the WX that's imported from that. You can pull in some other stuff. None of this obviously is relevant. The 60 meter stuff and UK stuff, unless you're over there. What I'm going to point out in here is if you wanted to add FRS and GMRS, you can pull those from right here. It's a stock config. It's already there. If you want marine VHF channels, and if you want the US MERS channels, all of that is kind of prepackaged into the software right here. So instead of having to go through manually, what I'm going to do is create a new right here and see how it defaults up into this D star. It's where I was messing with another radio. But if I pull this into here and then I want to import from a stock config and I want to bring in, say, FRS and GMRS, I click the import and it goes to the file that's built into CHIRP. And it gives me a list of all FRS, GMRS, all the frequencies, all the settings and everything. You can add, see how it's set because there's nothing in here except for that one default channel. It's going to put starting at 1 and just fill it in. If I wanted to adjust that, I'm going to go plus 10, and I want it to start at 31. So say I already had some stuff in here and I want to start at this channel, I just adjust that way or I minus that way. And then when you hit OK, it's going to do its magic, and then there they are. It'll pull it in, it'll pre-populate it. See, it picks the narrow FMs for the one that needs to be. It sets the tune steps, it gives it a name, sets the frequency. It pretty much sets everything that you need to have. And it will, just like that, now you have all the FRS and GMRS, which, like I said, the UV-5R is capable of transmitting on all of those. I don't advocate using unlicensed frequencies, if you will. If you don't have a GMRS license, I don't recommend using GMRS. And I don't believe, as of yet, the radios are necessarily per FCC rules allowed to be on FRS. But whatever, do what you need to do. You can pull the stuff in at least for listening. And that would be the same if you wanted to import. You know, if I want Marine VHF, and see how it's going to overwrite what I had. So I need to move up to, you see the yellow numbers that's showing you there's conflicts right there. So now it will start right after where I did. So I can just hit OK. And then there's all my FRS, all my GMRS, and then there's all the Marine, air, everything. It puts it all in. You can see it sets your offsets, gives your minuses because it will. These are transmit capable. And that's the same for MERS. US calling frequencies, these are your simplex calling. It's very few. It will put the 220 in here. The UV-5R doesn't do 220. But there is the I don't remember the model. It's a new X something that adds the third band, the 220. Which if you have a radio that'll do 220, I recommend getting on that band if you're a licensed ham. It's underused. It's a great band. There are some areas that have repeaters for that and such. So yeah, this is how you would pull in calling frequencies. Those are just straight simplex. 6 meters wouldn't do any good to pull into the UV-5R. It's not going to work on it. And 6 meters, one that's a real victim of propagation and such, takes different antennas and such. So yeah, your main ones are going to be your 2 meter and 70 centimeter for this. I'm not going to pull those in, so we're going to actually kill that and not save. So in here also, another thing that you can do, which is really good, you can import from data sources. So repeater book is what I use if I'm going to import repeaters. Radio Reference is a really good resource. If you want to import from there, you have to have an account. I believe to be able to import, you have to do the monthly subscription for them. At least you used to have to. You can pull in DMR, MARC repeaters. This radio is not digital capable, so pulling in DMR is not going to do a whole lot. You would have to do the analog only part of it. Otherwise, you can hear a lot of noise. But if you go to pull from repeater book, that's the one I was going to show today. You have a political query, which looks like this. So if I wanted to pull from, I don't know, we said Virginia Beach, 2 meters. Now I have had, you hit OK, no channels found. Obviously there's channels here. I get that error. So what I do, go to import from data source and repeater book. I do a proximity query. And then you can pick your zip code. So if I want to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you pick a distance in miles. So basically from the center point of that zip code, I want a 60-mile radius and I want everything on 2 meters. And then I hit OK. Now right here, you're going to get this. There was errors while opening that. Not all arguments converted during stream formatting. I just hit OK and you're still going to get your stuff. It's I'm not really sure why that throws that error, but I have still been able to import just fine. So then you're going to get, this is pulling data from repeater book. Now this will pull in digital repeaters. This will pull in anything and everything that's in that band you're looking to pull from, which was 2 meters on this. And you can see it gives it, tells you the comments, so you know where it's at. It gives you the name. Most of these are going to be the repeater's call sign. And then once you had that, and you hit import, it's going to do just like it did on the other. It'll just pull those in and populate it in. So this one here, we don't have a whole lot of memory left. But if you wanted in here, you wanted to pull something in, or pull something out of the list rather, say I didn't want that one, that one, that one, or that one, and just uncheck those. So when I import, it's not going to take that block. And that's how you pull from repeater book. I recommend repeater book for looking up repeaters. Good site. It's a good site. It stays pretty updated from what I've seen. And you can look up just about anything on there, including GMRS repeaters. I'm going to hit cancel since we're kind of maxed out. So what it would do is it would populate in just like this. So once you've done, if you wanted to do an import right there, now you can query if you don't want to import. If you want to do a proximity query, right? If I wanted 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and I hit OK, right? Then it's going to give me a new tab. There's everything that would have imported. Now I just have a new tab that has it all in there. So I could go through, and if well, I want you, so I can right click on that. I could copy, then I could come in here. I could scroll down to an available spot, hit paste, and it's going to put that right there. Copies over all the data, all the info, and I just leave it there. Now let's say I wanted to have, well, I want this one to be up above, right? So I can move it up and down, just like that. Okay. There are hotkeys for moving up and down as well. And see, I can change the order right here, control up, control down. Or you can mouse it however you want to do. You can't, to my knowledge, click and drag, which irritates me. But that's how you would adjust your list right there if you wanted. That's one that was copied from here. So if I save this right here, it's not saving all of this. This is just a tab from the query I did, where I can pick and choose what I want. Because you'll notice in here how some are set auto. See this one here? It's set digital. So I really wouldn't want to pull that into the UV-5R, because it's not, without extra equipment and so on, in its base form for the typical user, it is not a digital capable radio. So wouldn't be any point in bringing that in. Same with this, digital right here, and so on. So that's how you do a query. And if I wanted to query radio reference, it's going to come up with a username, password, and zip code. I do have some login info for that, but we're not going to, it's the same basic process. Repeater book is where I do most of the querying for this. So then once you've got everything programmed in, you've got your simplex in, you've got your repeaters in, FRS, GMRS. I put weather channels in here, just so if you want to hear the weather, you tune to whichever one happens to be active, and you can listen from there. Once you have everything in there that you want to have in, you're going to hit upload to radio, and it's going to come up with that same thing. So what I'm going to do the wrong COM port to show the error. And if I hit that, hit OK, it's going to give you that same exact blurb as when you downloaded. And then when I hit OK, see, it's trying to clone, and it's realizing that COM port's not talking to the radio. So it's going to sit there for a bit, and then it's going to, oh no, radio didn't respond. So I'm like, oh, well, crap. It's because it's the wrong COM port. So I change the COM, I tell it that, I go in, I hit clone, and there we go. And it's pushing it up to the radio. And when it's done, the radio will restart itself. And we'll have our new little channels that we put in down there on the bottom. Just like that. And then the radio's on, restarts, comes up, and we have our new channels programmed in. You won't hear any audio, by the way. when you're plugged in and programming the radio, because you have it plugged into where an earpiece or a speaker mic or whatever would go, so audio would be defaulting through that, so you're not going to actually hear anything. So I know that was a quick run through, but that's the basics of Chirp. You can see from there it's much easier, much more straightforward, I think, for programming a radio than it is by the keypad. You know, if you want to do it the hard way from the keypad, the previous video show you how to do that, you can do it. I don't recommend it. Chirp is by far the way to do it, but you have to make sure you have an authentic cable, or you'll get errors. If you do get errors in here, there is documentation, there is news, and so on. There's info. There's places in here where you can go through the wiki page, and you can look up if you have issues. And if you go through, you're having an issue, and you go through here, and there's just nothing helping out, you can report issues to them. Maybe you're one of the trendsetters and you've stumbled upon something they haven't found yet. But these are all the supported radios. Like I said in the last one, you can see it supports a lot. It actually supports some big name stuff. ICOM, Yaesu. If anybody's ever tried to program an ICOM through the menus, you'll see that's also can be quite annoying. Yaesu's aren't too bad. Kenwood's not too bad. But it covers a lot. It's great software, and it's free for the most part. Like I said, if you want to donate to them, donate to them. They do a great job. If you want to help them out, you can help them out that way. But that's Chirp. We're quick and dirty. Like I said, we didn't delve off into too much technical issues and whatnot. A great documentation to dig through if you're having problems. And then, of course, once you're all done, just make sure you've saved it, and then you can just close Chirp just like that. And that should do it. I hope that helped out a little bit. Of course, if you have questions, feel free to leave comments. Or if you run into anything in particular, I do my best to help out if I need. If we need to do a follow-up video on other aspects of Chirp or whatever, we can. But that is, like I said, it was a basic overview of using Chirp to get your UV-5R up and running. The process would be basically the same for other radios. You would plug in the radio, you would read from the radio first, and then adjust what you need to adjust in that data that you read from the radio, then just put it back in there with all the new information, and you're good to go. That will also pull all of the menu settings and everything from the radio so that you can adjust. Or if you don't want to adjust, if you've already got your menu set, when you download it, you add in your memories, you're going to upload and keep your menu settings exactly the same versus a default from inside the software. So I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope that was helpful for getting you programmed. We are planning a part 3 of this. That is going to be some radio usage with the UV-5R. I'm going to use some of my other radios, and we're going to go through the different antennas, which will also show the reasons why you want to upgrade from the rubber duck antenna that comes with it. You're going to want to do a little better than that. With some of the antennas I showed last time, we're going to go through all that, and then we'll do some field type testing. I'll have a radio in here, and I'll get out with one, and we'll do some transmission tests and stuff and show the differences. You know, hopefully you'll be able to hear the audio and everything, and we'll go from there. So that'll be coming hopefully soon. It's been real cold out here, so we're gonna look for a little bit of a warmer day, and then we'll get out when it's not as windy and stuff. I don't want you guys to have to listen to wind noise the whole time. And we'll do that. We'll do that like that. So 7-3. I appreciate everybody watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.